Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sabir, and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Tommy Siegel's newest book, Candy Hearts, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled until, after over 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, authors like Tommy and Jackie, we wouldn't be here today, and we are truly appreciative of it. So, tonight we are thrilled to have with us Tommy Siegel for the launch of his new book, Candy Hearts. Tommy Siegel is a Brooklyn-based musician and artist. As the lead guitarist for the power pop trio Jukebox the Ghost, Tommy has toured internationally and appeared on leading late-night television programs. His 500 Days of Comics challenge, in which he posted an original comic online each day, led to a viral following, with comics shared by Ringo Starr, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Tim Heidecker, Dan Aykroyd, and many hundred of thousands of others. On any given day, you can find Tommy getting over-caffeinated and producing music in his home studio for commercial use, film and TV, other artists, and his own projects. Joining Tommy in conversation is Jackie E. Davis. Jackie lives in Rochester, New York, with a bunch of happy houseplants, squishy plush toys, and her husband Pat. She discovered comics and her passion for them around 2015 and has been reading, writing, and drawing them ever since, launching her popular webcomic, Underpants and Overbites. She has self-published 2 comics collections, and her third book, Vulnerability is My Superpower, is coming out in April 2021 with Andrew McNeil's publishing. We'll also be hosting an event at the Strand for it virtually on April 12th. And so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Tommy Siegel and Jackie Davis to the stage.
Jackie, what's up?
Nothing. Just hanging out in my home studio. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Just hanging out in my music studio.
Okay, I had one question that I wanted to start off with, and it's what's the saddest meal you've eaten while trying to hit a comics deadline?
Oh, I feel like I don't know. I'm sure anyone who like kind of is prone to overworking can relate to just like I feel like sad meals are very regular for me, and I kind of black them out of my mind. Like I forget about them as soon as they happen. But like last night, I actually like was working on some stuff, and I had like this accidental. It was like it seemed like it was going to be the saddest cartooning meal of all time, but it ended up being like amazing. I had like mashed potatoes with fried eggs on top, and it was wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. One time I had banana peppers just poured onto a can of chickpeas, and it was surprisingly delicious, although I haven't gone back since. But okay, so people are here to learn about your book, and one of my other questions is how do you everyone says, how do you come up with your ideas? And that's kind of a broad question. But my question is, where do you put them before they turn into comics? Do you have like a big pile of notebooks or?
Yeah, I've got just like a million of these notebooks. I bought like one specific kind of notebook from Staples like 15 years ago. And so I've been a prisoner of this exact notebook because I want them to look the same on the shelf. But yeah, I've just always got like a rotating list of stuff. And yeah, I'm sure you've had this experience too, but it's amazing how long sometimes it'll stick around before it becomes a comic. I mean, I've got ones in here that took a year and a half to become an actual comic.
Oh yeah. I have some like all of a sudden the panel like fits into the comic that I'm making, but I drew it like 10 years or 5 years ago, and I'm like, whoa, it's I don't know. It's a really cool experience for it to be used.
Yeah, for sure. Which, by the way, I did want to tell anyone who's in the chat who are watching who's familiar with my work and isn't familiar with Jackie's work. Jackie's webcomic is amazing, Underpants and Overbites, and it's very cool to me that Jackie was down to moderate this, because I've been a fan for a long time and looked up to her as like a comic creator that I loved when I was starting out a few years ago. So anyways, shout out Jackie and Underpants and Overbites.
Oh, shucks. Thanks, Tommy. Okay, I have a few more questions, although there's one in the chat and you warned me, or you told me your band might ask, and someone wants to know, have you finished the giant tub of Soylent?
It's still in my car. I like right when the pandemic hit, I had like my doomsday prepper moment, and like I kind of heard murmurs that things might be disrupted, and so I ordered a bunch of Soylent tubs online. And yeah, I can't really bring myself to get through all of it, but every once in a while I'll, it's a good like emergency car thing to have.
What is Soylent?
It's like powdered food. It's like it's one of these like tech bro things where they were like, we found a way so that you never have to eat food. You can just drink Soylent your whole life and survive.
Oh, that is a good apocalypse snack. I think I have a lot of cold medicine that hasn't been used yet, because for some reason I was like, I gotta get those lozenges that numb your throat, and now they're just chilling in my suitcase in my bathroom. Okay, another question I have is, how many existential crises did this book cause you, if any, or none?
Oh my God. It's funny, even the idea of the book sort of gave me an existential crisis in the beginning, because I had just finished this daily challenge of doing a comic every day for 500 days, which was an insane thing to do. And I would not recommend it for anyone thinking about it. Though it was a good thing in the end. But anyways, when that wrapped up, I basically started talking to Andrews McNeil right after that about doing a Candy Hearts book, which initially we talked about coming out this past Valentine's Day, but I knew how much work it was going to require. And I was like, please, can we do it in the next Valentine's Day? And thankfully they agreed. But that was like my first existential crisis, was going like, oh my God, I can't do this. Then once I bought myself enough time, then it was like, then I got to the normal existential crisis where the book's on deadline and you have to think of more funny ideas. But I tried to be pretty responsible with like getting the deadline when it was due.
Right. But like the first collection you made, it was from the comics you made for 500 days. So like you already made it. Is that true? And then you just tied it together with like clever essays. And then the second one you had to like make with
yeah. I mean, the first one ended up being more I ended up redrawing a lot of it just so that I could feel really good about putting it on a dead tree, but yeah, Candy Heart, certainly I had to make a lot more new stuff. So yeah, 60% of the book was stuff, or maybe even more, was stuff I hadn't made yet. So
is there one comic you relate to most in this moment from the book? Or maybe in your life, maybe this moment would be like an anxious heart, but
I mean, there's a whole section of the book on COVID, so that would certainly qualify. The sort of like I don't know, the sort of single person in COVID thing is certainly that's a whole universe of mood, so that would certainly qualify. But yeah, I'm struggling to think of a specific one at the moment. There's more probing ones that I guess I probably would relate to, but I hesitate to volunteer that information.
Okay. I have a question. Do you ever like post a comic and then get a worried text from your mom? Or dad?
No, they're very nice about it. Yeah, no, my parents have been astonishingly no comment. Because I've posted a lot, I've done a lot of comics where they could and should have had all sorts of comments, and yeah, they've never told me to stop posting nudes of the Pringle Man, or that I'm shaming the family, or anything like that. So very thankful.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's never like, Tommy, you've really overdone yourself.
Yeah.
Put some pants on that man.
Yeah.
Okay, the Candy Hearts, it's a lot about romance, and I wanted to know if maybe it's too personal, but is there a worst date you've ever been on or a worst place you've ever taken a date?
Oh my God. Good Lord. That's a great question. And boy, am I struggling to come up with an answer. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Ooh, I don't have a good answer for you. That's a good question, though.
Okay,
I'll come back to it if I think of one.
Okay, yeah, feel free to let that marinate. Another maybe a question you can't answer right now is, what's the last photo you took? I just want to know.
The last photo I took on my phone?
Yeah.
It's actually quite dull. It's my bandmate Jesse took a picture of me with the Candy Hearts book so that I could have something to post online. Like, yeah, he did that like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, that fits. It's
Yeah,
cute.
Drummers take great photos.
Okay, we have one question that I'm flattered someone asked, and it's, what's the surprised shrimp in the background of Jackie's room? And that's this thing, and it's like, it's a thing, and it hangs on the ceiling, and I named her Brittany, and she just kind of floats around when I'm stressed, and also her face can convey like different moods, so I like to set her depending on how I feel. But I think it's a Yip Yip from Sesame Street that Pat got me at a farmer's market, and he just knew I'd love something that stupid. Okay. Ooh, someone wants to know how much of your heart content is related to stuff in your own life. It's kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah, I would say that if they don't arise from something in my own life, they come from me like thinking about the nature of relationships a lot of the time. I mean, yeah, like when I came up with the idea, it was almost one of those things that seemed like I drew it. The first Candy Hearts comic I drew for Valentine's Day, 2 years ago, I guess. It was the one with, and I'm gonna pull it up here, but with the hearts in the movie theater.
Oh yeah.
One says damaged, one says but in the same way, and the other one says damaged but in a creepy way, kind of leering over at them. But that was the first one I did, and I didn't even think it was a very original idea because I just assumed, I was like, I feel like I've seen a comic involving conversation hearts before, but it started occurring to me that I hadn't really seen like internal monologues sort of playing in that format. And so once I drew it and I saw that it was kind of resonating with people, I had the thought of like, I think this is like a format. And I'd been looking for like a consistent, either not, if not characters, and at least like a consistent format to play with. I'd been stabbing in the dark every day with something totally new. And so doing that kind of illuminated me to the idea that like, it can be, conversation hearts are like a useful meme setup almost for like putting your inner thoughts on the outside and people kind of instinctually understand the format. Like it's like having a thought bubble on a character without having to draw the thought bubble. You can just label the character themselves.
Yeah. And it's really cool because like, I haven't seen it in that format with a candy heart because, well, one, they're like a classic 90s, like gross snack. I mean, some people like them, but they taste like toothpaste. But I've seen a lot of people personify things like Life, like Shen Comics makes Life a buff dude, and then other people make, depression, like Gremlins and mental illness and stuff like that. But I think it's really cool to have like a standard character that can have an internal monologue. And then there's also something funny about a heart is supposed to be happy, but a lot of the times they're tragic in your book, which makes it like, and also I love the tiny details. Like one will have heels, and then you just know it's a different character, even though it's like they're pretty tough to work with. But you'll give one like a hat that a spy would wear, and I'm like, yeah, I know that guy. I've seen him before.
I mean, something we actually struggled with making the book was making sure that people didn't think there were consistent characters. So like not on one spread, not having like a green heart on one page and a green heart in the other one, because your eye immediately goes, okay, what's the story? You know? So
Right.
I did a lot of recoloring to make sure that the hearts were not the same on, you know, their spreads.
That's a good point. I didn't even notice that. So you don't want one of the candy hearts to be, well, I guess it would invite too many questions. Like, wait, so it wants to be lonely and it wants to go on a date?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Wait a minute, the green heart's cheating. Yeah.
right.
On page 62, the green heart is cheating.
Well, and someone's always going to notice, and then you're like, who notices that? Like, the thumb's on the wrong side. It's like, I'm sorry.
I mean, people notice. People have amazing eyes. It's like I wish I could somehow find a way to like post something online without actually posting it, because everyone, I'm sure you have this too. Like people are amazing editors, and within 10 minutes, someone will find the one thing that's wrong with the comic that I was like, I just didn't notice.
Oh yeah, or it's really hard for me like to have a comic misinterpreted. Like I have to try really hard to make it like specific. Or if it's a comic about like chopping onions and crying, then I get all these comments about like the real way to chop onions, and then I'm like, no, that's not what I was going for.
Right. I mean, I posted like a Candy Hearts the other day that was kind of riffing off of the GameStop stock like controversy. And I don't actually have any strong opinions on the subject, and it's not a world I'm closely involved with. It was just sort of like a very light gag about like someone who's into that world of Reddit stocks and someone who isn't. But the number of comments of people who were like, being like, this is the wrong take, and I'm like, I don't have a take.
Right. Like I'm just capitalizing on a moment. Just
yeah,
trying to
it's
say
the heart's talking. That's not me, you know.
No, my friend was like, it's so hard to do what you do, and I just get to sit back and watch and see if it fails or succeeds. And I'm like, yeah. But one person asked a question. I wish I could like remember their names in the chat. Sorry, you know who you are. But is it harder to write a song or to come up with a comic idea?
I mean, comics a lot quicker.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, songs take. I don't know. I mean, like Jukebox was actually where I was tracking vocals on a song today for Jukebox the Ghost that I have been kicking around since 2015 in various forms, and it's been rewritten a few times, and it's finally arrived, and you know, it's been floating around for almost 6 years now. So I don't have any comics that sit around for that long, and if they do, they don't weigh on my conscience in a way that like a song can sit around for that long, and really you keep coming back to it going like, no, but there must be a way that I can bring you to life.
Right. No, that totally makes sense. Like one can compost a lot faster and the other one will torture you more.
Yeah, well, and to me they're very different brain processes, because for me songwriting is like you're sort of tapping into that like artsy, sitting in the park, daydreaming kind of headspace, which I feel oftentimes with comics that maybe I'll get an idea from that kind of headspace, but the process itself is very it's like agenda driven. It's like, I thought of this joke or I thought of this topic. How can I best execute it? But that's also the virtue of, you know, the kind of comics I'm making. I would be kind of curious to like start drawing in a way where I don't have an agenda or a joke and see what that's like.
Yeah. I had a question in my brain and it went away, but I'll stall with another question someone had, which was, when was the last time you ate a pretzel out of that pretzel chip bag behind you?
Today.
Oh, good. So they're fresh.
Yeah. And I think actually there's someone named Tali who made us some made the band some like incredible chocolate covered pretzels. But anyways, they're being loved. So we have more. There's many pretzels in this studio right now.
Cool. Oh, I remember my question. When you first started making comics, like, so I remember I made a comic and it was like I used to make it really slowly and perfectly, and then I drew the flippers really poorly. Like she's like standing in flippers, and I just remember being like, I failed. Like the flippers, and I was wondering if there's things where you're like you used to care about, and now you're like, I just don't care.
I feel like I don't know about you. I go in and out of caring about certain things. I went through phases with the book where I was obsessed with this idea where I drew. There was one in particular that I drew of a Brooklyn street and someone catcalling someone else from the stairs. This one, and that got me obsessed with the idea that I was like, the hearts have to be on these photorealistic, amazing backgrounds.
Like brownstones.
They have to be beautiful. They have to be architectural, three-dimensional drawings. And thankfully, I shed that baggage because that meant that every Candy Hearts drawing took like 7 hours. So yeah, I go in and out of that, like where I'm like, no, I know that this is just a simple joke using object labeling, but it has to be a beautifully accurate rendered architectural drawing.
Yes, completely. And that's the hard part. I think also like a drawing tells you what it's going to be. Like for me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make it fast. And then I draw it slow. And then I'm like, oh no, it's turning out slow. And then I have to paint it slowly to like make it to sort of like I'm in too deep. Like you can't half finish your brownstone. It's like, come on, man, you already spent 5 hours. Like finish the stairs. And it's like,
yes.
But then other times I make something so fast and I love it more. And I'm like, can I do this all the time? But I feel like I just can't. I feel like it's just, I'm going to fall back into double outlining with like perfect gradients. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, I got to get out of here. It's like getting caught in a closet or something.
Well, and you use actual watercolor, which I so admire because I'm all digital. I used to draw on paper, but I'm 100% on iPad these days. And wow, I mean, I'm just impressed. You give yourself the limitation of not being able to just like delete the color.
Oh yeah, you know what's crazy is I can't understand color when it's on a computer. I'm like colorblind, and so I can't work on digital because it doesn't make any sense. There's just that like wheel that's like white in a pie, and then it turns, and then it's like pick your color, and I'm like, but if I use paint, I can make like any color in the world and just be like, oh, we need a dash of this and a dash of that. But digital is like, whew, it's a nightmare. But someone asked, like, do you have any originals that you sell, or it's all just digital?
It's all digital. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't drawn a single one of these on a piece of paper, but wow. I don't know. Maybe that would be fun.
Yeah. I think I read in your first book where like you transitioned to digital during your 500-day project. And then to draw on paper again, you kept trying to like undo it. And then it was like, it had ruined you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like once you get used to it, then you go back to paper and you're like, you draw one wrong line. You're like, wait, I just have to like live with this or start over. That's insane.
Well, yeah, sometimes I draw a hand and it comes out like this. And then I just laugh. I like laugh so hard. And I just made a comic where one of the arms was like an inch long and the other one was like 5 inches long. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. But I think it's kind of charming.
Isn't it weird how like your characters, whether you want them to or not, like always inevitably end up changing over time in that way that like you look at like Garfield from like 1979 and you're like, that is not recognizable.
Yeah, or like early Simpsons characters when they're kind of like pointy and a little spooky looking. And then like I even look at what I made like 2 years ago and I'm like, man, that's a mess. Like, look at that.
Yeah, honestly, it was especially weird to see in this book, which, if you're going to, for as far as a comics anthology goes, like it was made in a pretty narrow window of time. Like from first to last comic was less than a year and a half. And even in that time, like I noticed like I really changed like how long I thought the legs were supposed to be on the Candy Hearts, how big the feet are, like whether they're tiny little nubby hands or whether they're like actual muscular and long and you have anatomy. Like it's really weird to like flip through it.
Which direction did you go in? To smaller feet or more like human proportions?
I kind of went into like more of like almost like a Mickey Mouse direction, which I'm actually peeling away from again. It's like the pendulum swinging back towards, I don't know, somewhere in between.
Yeah. Sometimes my character changes like where her waistline is, so then it's like her pants are enormous, and then all of a sudden they'll be like down really far, and I'm like, "Whoo, just snuck these in here, like you're almost naked." Or just when I'm, because I'm drawing with like pen, and I'm like, "Ooh, nice."
Your characters do have high pants. I like that.
Yeah, they got to get those custom made for sure. I was gonna ask like what the process is like making a book versus making these comics for the internet, which is like really immediate. Because I know in my experience, I feel like we live in such a fast time where I think about the artists that I loved growing up, and I'm like, oh, did they just like go in the woods and make books
right?
and come out? Because I feel like now it's like I don't really have a choice. I just kind of grind, and then it comes out, and then I'm like, whatever, it's already dead to me. And I don't know. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. Like, and I've gone back and even read like Calvin and Hobbes anthologies and thought like, which to me are like the genius Valhalla of the comics form. And I kind of read it and I'll go like, this would not have done that well on social media. Like,
yeah, it's like it's kind of meandering and sort of
and it's subtle.
subtle.
The internet doesn't deal well with subtlety. Although I think something I admire about your comic is that you have found a way to do subtlety in a way that like pops. But I find myself like something I struggled with in the sort of daily project is I was on one end I was like honing my craft, and in the ways that I wanted to, and on the other hand, I was getting real-time feedback from internet algorithms and like what provokes engagement. And so sometimes it would push me in a direction where I would go like, is this productive or is it just and funny or is it just shocking? And I mean, something interesting about the Candy Hearts is that I don't know, without the internet, I'm not sure if I would have thought of it, but that's partially because I think I can't help but be influenced by like what works as a meme, because what are single panel comics if not like homemade memes? They're like artisanal memes, right?
Literally like artisan memes instead of like glue. There's some cool glue stick memes out there, but you like made
it's a handmade local meme. But so the Candy Hearts I think are like in a way inseparable from that internet process, because that's so much of memes that introduced me to the idea of object labeling and that being sort of a reasonable joke format to actually just say label an object with what it is. And that's kind of what Candy Hearts, I've found this weird cheat workaround where I can do it without sort of, I don't know, breaking that fourth wall. Like it's just sort of part of the setup. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about like what, especially for those of us like who have come up in webcomics in the internet era, like what would our work have been like if we were just like in a cabin in the woods, like in theory, like, the guy who made the Wizard of Id was,
Well, yeah, and maybe without the internet, you wouldn't know that Candy Hearts could be popular. Like maybe you'd just be like doing a whole zine of hand turkeys, and then people are like, all right, like that's cool, man. And like and that's the problem is like sometimes the feedback is like really positive, like wow, they love it. But I find it's a little hard because it's like no matter what I make, if it does really well online, I'm like, I'll never make anything better than this again. or if it does really poorly, I'm like, I'm not funny anymore. And that's hard, is like the feedback is helpful and it's cool when people are like, this really speaks to me or this made my day. But when it's like, do you make, one of the comments was like, do you make any real art? And I was like, Ooh, ouch.
Oh God.
Do you have any comments that haunt you that you wish?
Oh
You
yeah.
didn't?
Well, I make the mistake of, posting political cartoons. So that's like a whole nother battle zone that I open up voluntarily. So I live with that decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, candy hearts usually are pretty friendly. I mean, you were talking about like ones that you feel like it's hard to top. The one that I want to live long enough to make one that's more popular than this one is the one that's on the cover of the book, which there's been plenty that have gone viral in some way, but this one just continues to every 6 months. It's like on the front page of Reddit or circulating somewhere on, usually with the signature cropped out. But, you know, that's been hard to top because like, I remember I thought of that one. I was like, I don't know if I can beat this one.
Mm-hmm. You just have to do another, like, you have to do 500 candy hearts in 500 days.
Yeah, one of them is bound to be better.
You'll find something in there. My aunt always says, like, they can't all be good. And so.
Well, part of what I loved about making the book was, like, I kind of liked not knowing, like, how it was going to be received. There was, like, that was pretty liberating. There's a lot in the book that I like that I don't even know if other people are going to understand. And, like, if I'd posted it online, there might have been all these comments being like, I don't get it.
Well, that's a really good
They don't
point.
get to choose when it's in a book.
But maybe, yeah, right. But also maybe in a book, people are more forgiving. Like, it's weird because when you read a book, you're alone. And so it's up to you to decide if you like it, where there must be some psychology to like trending and like popularity and seeing that something has 20,000 likes. And then you're like, oh, I should like that. But if you're alone with the book, you might be like, oh, I really like the one about the weasel. And it's like, nobody likes the one about the weasel. You're not supposed to like that one.
Yeah, by the way, you guys got to check out the one about the weasel.
Buy it just for that. You'll find it.
It's something you were asking me earlier about sort of like what comics resonated with me. And I think like, I mean, actually, I had there was a therapist who actually sent me a message saying that like she found the format helpful for teaching some of her patients to think about their own patterns in certain situations because you kind of like write it out and sort of label your own behavior. And I definitely have found that for myself too, where it's kind of made me like just think about who I am in relationships and how I, act in the outside world. And it's like, it's simultaneously very daunting. And like, I think it has been also a useful tool for me. And like, as someone who's like, it's funny because I feel like this book should have been written by someone who's like, and I'm an expert on relationships, but I have no friggin' idea what I'm talking about. So it's just like, it's an interesting thing to like try to think probingly about relationship dynamics when you really don't know anything. It's useful.
Has it like affected your relationships with people?
For sure. Yeah. Well, because it's forced me to think about like what patterns I get myself into, like what is unhealthy about, like what are old triggers for me, like what are because a lot of it's like I don't know. A lot of the comics are kind of like probing at something like very intense, Right.
And like maybe even when someone texts you and they're like, I'm going to be late. And then you just think about like a candy heart that says like always late.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Greg, late again. And then yours is like defers or, doesn't value own time. And then you can like, you just see the whole world through a second lens, which is, I understand how that would be really applicable to therapy because it's like thinking about myself, apologizes for no reason. And then I'm like, oh, get them out of my head. They're eating me.
Yeah, I actually found myself journaling the other day and like writing out what I was thinking about in Candy Hearts form. And it wasn't funny and I couldn't do anything with it. But I was kind of like, oh, like my brain immediately tried to turn it into that. Although, and I also actually, I just thought of you're asking which comic I specifically related to. And there is one that feels very me. It's not me right now because of COVID, but there's one comic about two hearts going to a fish show. I feel like that's been me in a few different relationships.
Which one are you?
I'm the one who's like, I'm so excited they're finally gonna go to a fish show, and then they're the ones going like, I'm seeing my last show.
I really love that one.
Yeah.
I really like I think there's one about like, oh, like, yay, a new friend. Like that one is me.
Oh yeah.
Like a person where it's like wants to hook up, and then the one is like, oh, a friend. Like I'm always just like, hey, a friend, and then I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I mean
no.
that one, yeah, that one seems to cut deep for some people. But I figure everyone's both in different situations. Like, you know.
That's kind of the cool thing. And I feel like with my comic, it's like a diary comic, but like Pat, my husband, is often a character in it. And then in our like little interplay, someone will see themselves as the other one, which is like the beauty of two conversations. Like someone's like, I'm the one that can never find anything. And the other one's like, I'm the one that plans everything. And I'm like, yeah, identify with whoever you want, because
Right.
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I mean that's part of why I try and keep my the Hearts comics in particular. I try painstakingly to keep them gender neutral, because I don't think that they need to be gendered, and most of the time they're about internal emotional dynamics and not about like some baked in gender dynamic or something. So yeah, I think it's been confusing for some people, but I do try and do like they them instead of he she whenever they're referring to each other. Like sometimes it, if it's like a reference to a movie or something, I'll do a he or she, but I really try and keep it neutral because I think it's more fun that way. Like, because they're not really classic. I like the idea of like, even if it is a classic gender stereotype, that you can flip it on its head and it can be for anybody.
Yeah, totally. Did you think about that when you started them? Like, were you like, yes, this is what I want?
Well, someone pointed out that sometimes they do have sort of feminine legs, and that is true. So I try to, it's like one of those things I like try to do, but sometimes I'm like, I think this comic's just going to play better if it's like maybe a little more clear. But
well, if the heart's like getting catcalled and you're like, yeah, it could be neutral, but it's helpful if it's.
Yeah, I mean, that one, statistically speaking, is like pretty likely in one direction. But yeah, but I like to keep it kind of ambiguous. I think it makes it more interesting.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, when I made my comic, I tried really hard to make my character like really unsexy, if that's a term. But I just like, I think she's a mammal, but like I don't know what's going on like under the shirt pants. She has a butt, and then everything else I'm like, I'm gonna put a bra over this. Like, I don't know. But I really just don't want I don't want her to be like female. She's just like a creature that exists that has kind of fluffy hair. So
yeah, that's great.
which you don't have to be.
Yeah, you do like an oval pill shape, and I do a heart shape.
Right.
We have our shapes. We have our trademark shapes.
Right. Are the hearts their clothes? Are they really like beige underneath the hearts? Or
Yeah,
because the legs are different color from the hearts, so it's like, do they reproduce?
The hearts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a baby on the cover,
Right, but do they like come from a factory maybe, and then they get distributed?
Yeah, there's lots of mechanics of the hearts world that I've struggled with. One of which is that they take off clothing, but they don't always wear clothing. So like, if there's like two in bed, there will be clothing on the floor. But if they were walking around the living room, they wouldn't be wearing clothes. But to me, that's like what makes sense.
Oh yeah, totally. Like sometimes you got 3 fingers, sometimes there's 4 fingers, like sometimes.
Yeah, well, and it's weird it's also weird with the heart shape where the arms are in the middle of their torso and where the legs are, and that you have to get text above and below their arm point. It means that I've had some really weird attempts at putting them in clothing, it usually takes a lot of tries to figure out, like, it's, it's like, it's sort of like that old question of like, how does a dog wear pants,
I
And
was just gonna say, like, the tail. Like, I'm thinking of a lizard wearing pants, and it's like, dude.
yeah. Yeah, so like I don't know, with like Aladdin, there's one where there's like an Aladdin heart and they're on the magic carpet doing a whole new world, and I found that the vest worked, the pants did not. The hat worked, but the shirt didn't, like just the vest.
Well, that's it's the beauty of comics as like a gesture. You're like, good enough. Like, people get it. It's the Pringle Man. It's a heart.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even need to think about it. Yeah. Have you made the hearts like giving each other a piggyback ride? Because I bet that would be hard.
That would be very, very, very challenging. I mean, the other challenging element is that they can never be facing a different direction than forward. They have to have the text. Although at some point I should show people what the Candy Hearts butts look like, but I've never revealed that.
Ooh, it's like a little butt in a trap door. Like
I think it'd be pretty small. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't have it facing from behind because it would just be blank or like naked.
Yeah, no. I mean, I can't even have them at a severe angle because the text gets really strange looking. So they sort of have to be like this or this or this.
I had this like thought when I was making comics one time, and I was like, oh my God, it's like they're on a stage and they're performing, and it's a theater performance. And then there's like overacting and underacting, and you can do, like the really funny stuff, but then you have to think about what kind of performance the tone has. And so, yeah, the hearts, everything in my world has like a 3/4 angle. And then, God, the worst thing is like trying to make a character like read a phone, like from here. And then,
oh my God,
I like that. I'm like, do I put the eyeball on the top?
Oh yeah. No, I have struggled with this. And with my normal characters, I give them like this huge nose and two eyes, one of which is floating off their head. And drawing that character from behind and what their head looks like from that angle, looking at a phone, for instance, is like, I have not figured it out because it looks insane.
Well, yeah, and then the phone is too small to convey any real information anyway, and then you're just distracted. Yeah. And if it's big, it's like, is the phone the size of a TV? Like, come on, what is this? It's a nightmare.
It's interesting how phones are such a large part of our existence in modern culture, but like, it's hard to reflect it back in other art. Like, I mean, I guess there's a fair amount of hip hop, I guess, that does, but there's not a lot of songs about phones, because it's so unpoetic. And I feel like comics too, it's like it's like we're all just like, oh, let's talk about something else
than our phones. I mean, I feel like comics have they some of them talk about, like, comics are closer to this like depression that people are willing to talk about, like autobio stuff and like phone scrolling. But yeah, I've yet to like be enchanted by a comic about a phone. That's because it's no longer like you twirl the telephone cord around yourself and you're lying in bed. It's like, you're kind of having a bad time. Like, maybe, probably.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of comics about how people don't pick up the phone and then they hang up and then they text immediately after. That comes to mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Do you have anything you really want to say before I move into the Q&A?
Well, before you move into like audience questions?
Yeah, we got like 1 minute left.
No, let's jump in.
Okay. All right. I gotta browse through here. Are the candy hearts sized, or are they 6 feet tall? I'm not sure what that means, but I'm just asking that.
I think they mean like how in the Candy Hearts cinematic universe, like what size are they? Like if they were in our world, which they seem to be visually, like how big are they? And the answer is it seems to vary, and I'm quite inconsistent about it. But I'm trying to do them about the size of people, or maybe a little smaller.
that makes sense. But they're not like little gremlins that
They're
exist.
not little. No, they have to open normal people doors and stuff.
They're pretty wide though. Those are gonna have to be some double doors.
Yeah, no, there's some logistical impossibilities in the book.
Yeah, it's really hard to make mine crouch. 'Cause
Yeah.
oh my gosh, and to sit pretzel style is like it's a nightmare. Like the hips have to be dislocated, and then like one time Pat drew what the skeleton of my comics would look like, and it was like he's like, all right, their spines would break because their heads are so big, and I'm like, hey, come on, leave them
And
alone.
the rib cage goes like all the way up and down. Yeah.
They have no neck, and it's like, whew. Okay. Someone asked, Mark asks, who are your comic inspirations, past and present?
I mean, past, I would say the biggest three for me were Calvin and Hobbes, The Far Side, and Bone, which is like more of a graphic novel, I suppose. But those three, those were like my big ones growing up as a kid. But I was like obsessed with newspaper comics in general and got pretty geeky about it. So, you know, I was one of those precocious kids who like would have been name dropping like Pogo and Crazy Cat because like I knew they were cool, you know, in the comic strip history books I was into. But yeah, and then there's this big blank spot where I didn't really ingest any comics at all from like 13 to like 32. And in the last few years, I feel like I've like just gotten to know so many amazing creators, including you, Jackie. And I mean, geez, some of my favorites. I love False Knees. I love Pants. Extra Fabulous is like incredible.
Oh yeah, I love it. Sometimes his are like just newspapery and like,
oh my God,
really poorly drawn essentially. And I'm like, oh, look at you flexing. That's some cool stuff.
Yeah, Perry Bible Fellowship, of course. That's definitely one of my faves. But honestly, there's so many. I've been meaning to actually like just keep. I feel like there's some people who follow my comics who found me through sort of more meme vessels, and I kind of like I have a sense that some of these people would really love like a lot of web comics, but they don't know it yet. So I've been meaning to like just constantly be like, you guys should check all these other people out, but also maybe don't because then you might not like my stuff as much.
Right. It's like comics for people who don't read comics. And then they're like, what is this? And you're like, just here's more of it. Bye.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone wants to know what draws the groupies more, being in a band or making cartoons? Slightly smiling face is written out in words.
Wow, that's very good. Yeah, you know, I mean, well, the plus side with cartooning is I get to draw the groupies. Ha ha ha. Is that a good answer?
That's pretty good.
Okay.
Tommy, loved your Brandon Flowers Pringles post. Will you do a Brandon Flowers candy heart? And are you still a Killers fan?
Yeah, you'll have to DM me and discuss what you imagine of Brandon Flowers candy heart. I guess it would be like, yeah, something relating to the song. That why am I forgetting the name? Mr. Brightside. There's got to be a candy hearts in there.
And that was Maryland for when they DM you later.
Okay. But that's a good that's an interesting idea. And you know, I actually one of the few new records I checked out last year was the new Killers record, which I hadn't heard there. I missed probably 4 Killers records, but I heard the most recent one, and I thought it was awesome. Loved it.
Okay, I really like this question. Did you have to get permission from a candy company, or are they public domain?
Haven't yet. And in fact, that was one of my biggest concerns when I started working with Andrews McNeil. Is I was like, am I going to get in trouble? But it seems to be a generic enough idea that, and multiple companies make conversation hearts. There is like the original, which I think Brock's makes or something like that. But I'm using a different font. They don't own the shape of a heart, nor do they seem to own text being on a heart. So I think I'm in the clear. But there was a moment there where I was like, is my best idea going to get my pantsuit off me, you know?
Right, like a cease and desist. I mean,
Like I know the
honestly,
Pringle Man would get me in trouble, but I wasn't sure about Candy Hearts.
oh yeah, because you had to call it. Did you have to call it like Prongles on purpose, or?
Yeah. Lucas, my editor, was very generous and sort of allowed it to slide with Prangles and references to not a specific brand, but just as a stacked potato chip man.
Right, like just to be careful. It's like we can't afford to have this be a problem. Okay. Janet in Georgia says, "Can you draw the Pringle Man, the Prangle Man coming out of a Candy Hearts box?" Asking because I'm not on social media and can't ask otherwise.
Man, that would be like my Infinity War. This is when the franchises collide.
Oh, speaking of, here's another question: can Candy Hearts date non-Candy Hearts?
Whoa.
Like, are there other candies?
Well, there is one comic in the book that, let's see if I can pull it up. I think I know where it is. There is one where there is a Candy Heart dating an actual beating heart. So apparently that would seem to be a different species entirely.
All right, yeah.
They don't even have arms. The human heart. So
right, they're not sweet. Probably are the Candy Hearts probably sweet?
Well, they're probably about as sweet as the real thing, which is to say, not very sweet and quite chalky and unappetizing.
Right, great for heartburn, and then that's about it.
Yeah, they're basically like a Tums.
They are like a Tums, and they're all the same color too.
Yeah, like a cherry flavored Tums.
Yes.
Anyway, shout out Brox.
Thanks for this whole career thing.
Yeah, no one's watching from Brox.
Oh, someone says, "Have you ever thought about making a comic with jukebox lyrics or songs in it?"
It's funny. It's like at this point, I would say most of the people who follow my comics don't have any connection to the band, which I think would come as a shock to the people who are aware of the band and follow the comics. But I think if I had to guess, it's like 80 to 90% of the people who follow it at this point are don't know the band at all. So I haven't really done a lot of cross-pollination there, just because I know a majority of people would be like, what?
Yeah. Also, just crossovers are hard too, because like they're for it's like a Venn diagram of enjoyment. It's not all enjoy. It's like the crossover is only enjoyed by the few.
But what I should do is I should do more cartooning when like our new record comes out from the band account for actual band related stuff. So yeah.
Ooh, yeah. When's your next record coming out?
I don't know. We're kind of deep in it right now. We've been working in these kind of chunks where we sort of quarantine together and work on it for like a month. So at this point we've probably spent 4 months working on it and then building the studio too. So I don't know when it's going to come out, but we're certainly on the home stretch. So
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone wants to know, what is the best Halloween costume you've seen based on one of your comics?
Oh, I've definitely seen there was a Sailor Moon Pringle Man that really stuck in my mind. That was very funny. And then there were some people who dressed up as Candy Hearts, as like conversations that they had written. That was super cool. But I only got to have one Halloween before the with Candy Hearts before the world shut down. So I'm looking forward to playing. I would love to meet more Candy Hearts and in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Halloween's pretty weak with
pretty weak. Well, we in our band does like a what they're referring to is we do like a run of shows at Halloween every year when it's not a pandemic, where we do a set of our own stuff and then we get in costume and do a full set of Queen. So it's like a Halloween tour that we do called Halloween.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I read about it on your wiki.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a Wikipedia page. That's legit.
Wait till you see our wiki leaks.
Okay, someone says if a candy heart and a gummy bear had a baby, would it be a gummy heart?
Oh wow. Or a really chalky bear. It would be like a Flintstones vitamin. But
Totally.
yeah. The Sailor Moon Pringle is in the chat. Hi, Carol. Great work.
Ooh, great work. Cool. Someone wants to know if you and I would do a comic off and take a topic and write a similar comic. I think we have a few minutes left, just a few, if you wanted to do that at the end, Tommy. If you want to do that.
I mean, an Underpants and Overbites collab is dream come true.
What are we supposed to write about?
I don't know.
Or like, wait, how about you draw? Do you want to draw my character and then I'll draw your character?
Wait, should we draw them from memory?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, but yours is easier. Because if you're drawing a heart, that's pretty easy.
No.
Okay. Oh wait. Okay, I'm gonna draw it from memory. This is gonna be bad. Okay.
I mean, yours is like 3D. That's challenging. I don't really know where the.
Oh, this is wild. Oh, this is. I think I'm actually not. This isn't that bad. I thought it was going to be much worse.
You know, drawing this is like, where do the legs go? Like, do they go on the point? Do they go? Do they have fingers? There's a lot of details I didn't realize.
Okay, I think I've got it. This is like pretty. Can you see this? Let's see if I can.
A little bright.
Yeah, it's a little bright. How do I? Can you see that?
Oh, she's coming into focus.
Oh, the camera's just a little. Oh, there we go.
Oh my gosh! Look at that ponytail. She's bald on top with like a ponytail in the back.
I didn't get into the nitty gritty.
This is just a heart. I think it's in reverse, maybe, but it just says "sad to be alone soon" because this was so fun.
Yeah. Oh man, the people, and also just like I we've been talking, so I haven't seen all the comments, but every once in a while I'll just see one, and also just want to say thank you to everyone who showed up for this. This is like, I'm totally blown away that there are 220 people watching right now, and thank you so much for buying the book. Like, I'm so honored. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, this has been really fun. I'm so glad I could be here.
Oh, thanks for moderating. I was so stoked when our mutual editor sent this email being like Jackie's down to do it. I was like, Jackie.
Ah, shucks. Well, maybe we'll have to collab in the future and make something strange for the people in the comments.
Sorry to appear to wrap this up. That was a fantastic end to the event. I thoroughly enjoyed the comic off. But to everyone watching, thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you who haven't purchased a book, there's a green button in the center of the screen which says Purchase Candy Hearts, which you can click on. It streamlines the process easily. And on that note, thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Jackie. It was a fantastic discussion. And to everyone at home, sorry.
I was just going to say thanks for having us. This is really fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Sabir. And also just another thank you to Andrews McMeal for putting this thing together. It's been a dream come true. So
on that note, everyone, have a fantastic evening. Thank you.